It's a big game for the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's talk about the keys to the Bengals coming out on top.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. Together, we cover your Cincinnati Bengals every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're free and available everywhere you get your podcast, where you can follow along, and on YouTube, where you can subscribe to the podcast and join the First Listen Club, regardless of where you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by BetOnline, who has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. And James, pivotal game, right? As we're going to talk about many of these games the rest of the way, key games for the Cincinnati Bengals team. And, I was looking over at 538 and they score games in two different categories to get an overall game quality score, essentially, or watchability score or something. And that combines the quality of the teams for one score. And in that respect, this game is a 97 out of 100. And importance in this game, I think, was like a 94 or something on importance. So the overall score for the game of quality and importance in terms of playoff seeding and playoff implications and things like that, really high up there. And I remember late last year looking at some of these scores and some of the Bengals games down the stretch having similar quality and importance implications. And here we are looking ahead. It's this one, the Patriots game, the Ravens game, the Bills game, all very similar with really high importance scores and varying degrees of quality, but all pretty high quality because the Bengals are a quality team. So should be a good one this Sunday.
It's a huge game, and it's a huge game for different reasons now, because at least the way I look at it for the Bengals, because they went 3-0 in November. And when they went 3-0 in November, that dug them out of the 0-2 start to September. Now, they did get a win in September, but it took them 3 games to do so. And that's where I see them now is, okay, so now they're on track for the postseason. Now they're on track probably for a wild card spot, maybe the division. We'll see. But what Sunday can do, because I've said a lot on this podcast, oh, well, this is a swing game coming up. And it's because the Bengals put themselves in that position. This isn't a swing game. This isn't going to swing the Bengals from playoff team to not playoff team. I'm not going to feel much different, I don't think, barring something really unforeseen about the Bengals on Monday, or after the game on Sunday, than I do about them now, based on the outcome of the game. And so, one, that's a good position to be in. But, and here's the fun but, and we might as well start with some positivity. If they do win, and beat the Chiefs, who I think have been the best team in the NFL, beat the Chiefs, who are favored, according to BetOnline, at Paycor Stadium on Sunday over Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase and company, assuming Ja'Marr plays, and he was limited again on Thursday. If they get that done, now suddenly, instead of, all right, well, they're going to go to the playoffs, we'll see if they can make another run, it's, okay, well, who's better? It completely, it flips the script. It isn't a swing game. It's a, oh, we've arrived game. And this is where we're at. It's a status game. Are you a playoff team? Are you a contending team? Which both of those I feel like can happen if they lose on Sunday. And you could still label them that way, especially if it's a tight game. But if you win it, it's like, okay, who are you picking against? The Bengals. Can they make a run at one of these top seeds? Can they not only win the AFC North for a second straight year, but regardless, because if you beat the Chiefs at home, I get it. They struggle with the Browns, but are you serious? You're telling me you can't beat the Browns at home? You're telling me you can't handle business against the Bills at home? What about the Ravens at home? So I'm just looking at the home games. And so now suddenly, as tough as that schedule is, and it's very, very tough, this is arguably the hardest game. And so it's a good barometer, but it's also a status game, because if they win it, it's like, oh man, we might be talking about Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase and company being the best team in the NFL. So it is a big game for sure.
Yeah, and it's certainly big for narrative, national perspective. I think a lot of things you're talking about are going to be like what other people say, how other people react, and to me, it's how the game goes. Is it a game that comes down to the wire? Is it a game that doesn't go the way the Browns game went for either side? Now, if the Bengals come out and blow out the Chiefs, I mean, what's the percentage chance of that happening? But
That
if
feels
they
like the
do,
least likely, right? Doesn't it? I would say.
probably, but who knows, right? It's
I
certainly
didn't
within
think the
the realm
Browns
of
were going to blow out the
possibility.
Bengals for to your point. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, you never really know, but it seems like that would be pretty unlikely for two relatively healthy teams. It's not like either team is missing key pieces, and we'll talk about some of those injuries as well. But if they can play a close game that comes down to the wire again, as they have the last two times these teams have played, you'll know that they can hang with the Chiefs, as they certainly believe in that building, as they showed last year that they could do. And now with these different teams, as both have evolved, as Chris talked about yesterday in the crossover episode, the Chiefs go out and draft guys to deal with the Bills and the Bengals in the AFC, the teams they have to go through to get to the Super Bowl, addressing their secondary with a whole bunch of new pieces there. And then you feel like you know that about this team. So if you're looking for things to learn, that is something certainly that I'll be looking at. We'll get a good indication here. This is one of the better pass offenses, obviously, that they're going to play. The Bills and the Chiefs are the two top passing offenses they're going to play the rest of the year. So a great test for the Chidobe Awuzie secondary. It's a mouthful to add list to the end of Awuzie. Probably not the best way to go about that. But anyway, it'll be a good test to see how they stand up to the challenge of a Patrick Mahomes,
Cheeto-less.
Andy Reid. Cheeto-less. Yeah, that's better.
That's the
For
way to
sure.
go. I had time to think about it though.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. I like that. Yeah, but you get what I'm saying here. Like, this is a key
Yeah,
matchup in the game overall. And I said yesterday, apparently incorrectly, when I was talking to Chris about the Bengals' ability to play defense, matching 12 personnel with nickel. The Chiefs in the last couple of weeks have been a heavy two wide receiver team. They're taking the third wide receiver off the field. They do have some injuries. They're both relatively healthy teams, but Mecole Hardman is not playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's on IR. And in that
Kadarius
time,
Toney not playing.
Kadarius
Either.
Toney's not practicing still as we record this. Very unlikely to play. Yeah, absolutely. And so because of that, they're going to these two tight end looks a little bit more. The Bengals are probably going to match that with nickel. So that'll be interesting to watch this week as well, as they've been really good there. So some very interesting things to watch when the Bengals defense is on the field, I think, against the Kansas City offense that they held, as I said yesterday, twice to 3 points in the second half last year. And I imagine that everyone on that Kansas City team is very hyped up for this game.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure they're really hyped up, and they should be hyped up. And I actually, as you were describing the defense, I have a theory. It's not a prediction, more so a theory. I think a theory is the best way to describe it, that I want to run by you, and we'll see if our listeners agree. And so we can do that coming up next. But first, a word from PrizePicks. Today's show brought to you by PrizePicks. And daily fantasy, when you think of daily fantasy, you might not think of PrizePicks yet, but you should, because PrizePicks is the way daily fantasy should be. What you do is you pick 2 to 5 players. Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, taking the over on both, man, because I think it might be a offensive fireworks show on Sunday. You decide, you look at their projection and you say, all right, I'm going to take more or less than the projection. All you have to do is beat the PrizePicks projection. If you do that, if you pick right, more or less, boom, you're winning. And it's, like I said, 2 to 5 players. You can make entries in 60 seconds or less, and you can do so right now at prizepicks.com, or download the PrizePicks app to play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100 instant deposit match, just like that. So go there now, prizepicks.com or the PrizePicks app, and use promo code Locked On for an instant deposit match up to $100 today.
You got a scenario for me, James? You got a theory?
Yeah, I have a theory, because the reason the Bengals have won the past 2 games against the Chiefs it really came down to, and we know that Joe Burrow is a great quarterback and Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. Both teams have great weapons. It came down to Lou Anarumo and his defense finding a way to get stops, and you flip it, and the Chiefs at the end of the game, especially crunch time, cannot. Joe Mixon running through them after the interception, getting into field goal range at Arrowhead. We saw how things went on the goal line in the week 17 when the Bengals won at Paycor Stadium to become AFC North champions for the first time since 2015. Both times, by the way, this calendar year. So they're trying to beat the Chiefs for a third time in a calendar year. That said, I think if the Bengals win on Sunday, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm shortchanging Lou Anarumo, maybe I'm overvaluing the importance of Chidobe Awuzie, or undervaluing what Trey Hendrickson and DJ Reader and these guys can do on the defensive line, or insert whoever else you want to say on the roster that's going to play a lot of snaps on defense. But I think it's going to be more so because of their offense. You mentioned during the crossover about how you kind of want to see it go the same way the Chiefs and Chargers have gone. Chiefs, Bills, obviously everyone said that was the game of the year, and that was really the AFC title game, hogwash, but that's what people said last year. The way the offense has performed. I'm not saying the Bengals defense can't get a stop here and there. I'm not saying that, because I think they're certainly capable of doing it. But I think it's less likely and kind of unrealistic to expect this Bengals defense now to do what it did last year to this offense. I think this offense for the Chiefs has been harder to stop, and they're a little less predictable. They can run it now better than they have in the past. Not that I'm worried about them running it down the Bengals' throats, but they can keep you honest that way. And so to me, this is sort of about the Bengals offense. And can they exploit that Chiefs defense to drive in and drive out? Because that might be what they need to do to win.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what Lou Anarumo brings, because last year there was a wrinkle, and it clearly caused issues for Patrick Mahomes. And depending on who you listen to, he either melted down or the Bengals defense confused him, or whatever the narrative was. Mahomes wasn't good in either second half. The Chiefs offense in both of those games last year was not good in the second half. In both of those games, they were great in the first half. And that probably can't happen again. 21 points in the AFC Championship game, 28 first half points for the Chiefs in the regular season before various degrees of comebacks were required by the Bengals offense. It was 28-17 at halftime, and then it was 21-10 at halftime, right? And so the interesting thing to me is that it seems like Kansas City has had this game kind of circled on their calendar in some ways, in terms of being ready for the drop 8 stuff in particular that was so effective in the playoffs last year. And so the challenge for the defense, and I know we're going to get to the offense here, the challenge for the defense to me is, what wrinkle can you throw at Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid that will actually slow them down? Because people have been throwing the kitchen sink of this offense for years, and it's proven to be pretty dang difficult to impossible to stop.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, can you get enough stops or interceptions or whatever it is? Can the ball bounce your way in enough ways? The Bengals picked off Mahomes twice in the second half in overtime in that playoff game. Obviously, both of those are really big plays. One leads to a touchdown, the other leads to the game-winning field goal. And so, can you get that again? Can you find another answer? Because Kansas City's seen so much. That's such a challenge to me on the defensive side of the ball. So all of that is to kind of come back to your point and say, well, yeah, can the offense go toe-to-toe? Because they might have to if the defense can't do it again. And shame on me if they fooled me twice and they're going to do it again. But 3 points in the second half again, guys? Come on.
No, I'll say no, and they can cold take me all day if that's what they do. I mean, it's just unrealistic. By the way, if the Bengals offense only scores 3 points in the second half, we're ripping them. Spoiler, unless they score like 50 in the first half and get the sit Burrow for the second half. It's a joke. It's not going to happen. You mentioned turnovers, and the weird thing about the past few weeks is, as good as the Bengals defense has played, how many turnovers have they forced? just since the bye.
Yeah, they've had some bad luck in that category, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
But that's what I'm saying. So you can look at that one of two ways. Either one, they're bad at forcing turnovers, or two, luck is going to, the ball is going to bounce their way and they're going to find a way, right? The Traylon Burks, maybe Bates is there this week and can get to it. By the way, he couldn't get to that. People were like ripping Bates for not getting that ball.
The ball bounced in a certain way.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
there's no way.
No way. But maybe it does. Maybe it does this week. And so if that happens, and I think that's the path to this defense really limiting the Chiefs the way they had last year, because it limited them, but it's not like the Chiefs didn't score, right? The Chiefs are a good offense. They're going to score. But when I look at like the most likely path to victory for the Bengals, it's Ja'Marr Chase comes back. You already have T. Higgins playing like a wide receiver one. Hayden Hurst is playing great and clearly is excited to play Mr. Reed, the safety there for the I almost said Texans because he was drafted by the Texans for the Chiefs. And so we'll see. But I think this offense does need to be firing on all cylinders. And maybe that isn't now. Maybe that's in the divisional round or in the AFC title game. But I think ultimately to beat this team, this Chiefs team, you're going to have to be able to go toe-to-toe. And you're going to have to outscore Mahomes. It's not going to be this, our defense is so much better than your defense that it's going to balance out. And in the end,
it's not, by the way.
It's not.
But
that's what it was last year.
Right. I know. But this year, I don't even know if that's the case. Like, I think the Kansas City secondary is actually better. And the other side of that is I think the Bengals offense is better. Last year, going into that game against Kansas City, they had scored 22 points against the Chargers when they made that big comeback and then couldn't put it together in the second half. They had scored 23 points against the 49ers when they didn't put the ball in Joe Burrow's hands until it was too late. They had scored 15 points against Denver with the most conservative game plan on the face of the earth because they were supremely confident that Denver wouldn't be able to score on them. And then they put up 41 against the JV Ravens, which is still hard to do, but like there was one game there out of their previous 4 where you felt like this offense is really clicking right now. This year, by comparison, they've gone through this major evolution that we've talked about quite a bit this week over the course of the year, to the point where their running game is efficient right now. Joe Burrow is still playing at an extremely high level. He's been very consistent. He's playing on time. The trends, I looked at this today, the trends for pressure rate have dropped about 10% from the first 4 weeks of the season to the recent play of the offensive line. So the offensive line has been better. Joe Burrow taking fewer sacks when he is pressured, that's down about 10% from early in the season. And that's including a massive spike in pressure to sack rate against the Browns when he turned 50% of those Browns pressures into sacks. So the offense is playing better. They're pass blocking better. Burrow is playing on time. And this is such a key piece for this offense and him playing at a high level, that with the running game playing better, there's a lot of reasons to believe more in this offense this year than last year, because they have all these things that are more consistent and their early down success rate is better. Their general success rate is better. Plus, they've got this explosive play idea in their back pocket. They've got Joe Burrow being one of the best back shoulder throwers of all time, as JT O'Sullivan would say, in their back pocket. They've got Ja'Marr Chase potentially coming back and adding that explosive element to the offense in their back pocket. They've got all these things that they can add on to the more consistent success. And that feels like something that you can count on more, right? That's more in the Bengals' control than trying to deal with Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah. They're battle tested to a degree, and they've had to overcome without certain things. And if it can all come together now in time for this stretch we're on, or in time for playing, like I said, the team that I think Bengals fans are going to hate when I say this, I can't wait for the comments, the best team in the NFL up to this point, it might hit at the right point. And by the way, you don't want to necessarily be the best team in the NFL week 13. You want to be the best team in the NFL week 19 and 20 and 21 and 22. Yeah. I think 22 is where it ends. Point is that's when you want to be the best team anyways. So we'll see, but it's going to be an interesting battle. I get to give my prediction, which I know people are waiting for, and we can put and give our finishing thoughts on this matchup coming up next. But this episode of Locked On Bengals is brought to you by Audible. Audible, well, they're releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we know you're going to love. You can find Think Like a Champion now wherever you get your podcast. Think Like a Champion is a brand new podcast from Russell Wilson and Audible. Wilson, alongside co-host Harry Wilson and the late Trevor Mowad, dig into high-performance athletes, artists, leaders that push the boundaries, from guys like Von Miller, who knows, the Bengals, they may see him in the postseason, to Tim Tebow and so many more. Olympic medalists, NFL stars, business leaders. Head over to Locked On Presents for a sneak peek of Think Like a Champion, or catch the full series, available anywhere you get your podcast, available everywhere now. Let's ride with Audible. Get in the game.
Yep. All right. Predictions. We've got two teams that are 7-2 in their last 9 games coming to play each other in Cincinnati. We've got two of the most efficient offenses in the NFL, the Dolphins also in that conversation, and I'm excited to see their test against the San Francisco 49ers this week. But that is a side note. That is a personal bit of intrigue to me, because Fred Warner and that DeMeco Ryans 49ers defense could provide a little bit of a blueprint for Mike McDaniel's offense for AFC teams going into the playoffs here. So I'm interested from that aspect, from a Bengals perspective. But two teams, like I said, 7-2 in their last 9. The Bengals 0-2 in their first 2, and that is the difference between these teams. Mm-hmm. The Bengals are taking care of business those first 2 weeks. We'd be talking about 2 9-2 teams here, but not the world we're living in. And so the Chiefs appear to be better than the Bengals, and a lot of that could be because of those first 2 weeks, and a lot of that is certainly a year-over-year expectation with the Chiefs. But the Bengals are getting there too, James. So what do you think? What do you think about this game?
I'm going to preface it by saying if you were painting a picture of how the season was going to go, and it's easier to do this in hindsight, I think, but overall, given appendectomy, which was certainly more, it ruptured, and it was a serious surgery where Burrow was barely walking around practice a week afterwards, and, golf carting it and leaning over a little bit and all of those things. Think about that like first week of August, that was the case. And so he got off to a bit of a slow start. And so, yeah, we picked him against the Steelers. We picked him against those teams, but the slow start for this offense makes sense when you have all the new faces on the offensive line that didn't play. And like I said earlier, you want to play your best at the end of the season. And it isn't the end of the season yet. It's getting there, and you want to play close to it now. And I think the Bengals are going to on Sunday. I think they're going to play really well. They're in a groove. They're confident. The offensive line has certainly got an edge to it, which is going to help. I don't think that they're going to let Chris Jones wreck the game the way he almost did in the AFC title game. I don't think Burrow's going to lose and get his Burrow nameplate ripped off. You go back and watch that Week 17 game where the Bengals won, and the last time I saw it, it was actually at the Combine, Jake. It was on the screens. I went out to get some food, and it was like, my God, he just got hit and hit and hit. It was after a long day of working and in the Indianapolis Combine. But the point is I don't think that's going to be the case on Sunday. But I don't know if this defense can stop Mahomes consistently. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop Travis Kelce and then all of these little weapons that are capable of beating you. And so I think this is a slugfest. I think it goes down to the wire. And for the first time this year, I'm picking the Bengals to lose, which a lot of people would call me a homer. Others are going to say, you idiot, you're wrong. The Bengals are going to beat the Chiefs. And they might. Would be a fun podcast to do afterwards. But I'm going to take the Chiefs in this one. It doesn't mean that I'm taking the Chiefs to win long term. But on Sunday, I think that is Ja'Marr Chase 100%? I'm not sure. If he was, it would feel a little different, I think. But that's a huge, huge weapon. It's the second best player on the field, maybe third, I guess. I would have him ahead of Kelce and behind both quarterbacks. So there you go. So third. If he's not 100%, it's hard to bank on this offense to do what I said, which is outscore the Chiefs. So I think they come close, but I think they come up short 34-31. Bengals fall to 7-5 on the season.
Yeah, and it could certainly go that way. You know, it'll depend a little bit on a lot of luck factors. They're huge X factors in this game, which are turnovers. You know, do the DJ Reader batted passes this week fall to the ground again, or are they intercepted?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have, you know, the stuff that we saw with the Bengals Steelers a couple weeks ago, where every bounce seemed to go the Steelers' way, and it didn't matter in the end. But those things could obviously play a huge part in this game. We can't predict those. And that's what makes predicting things so challenging, right? Is like, you can't predict, yeah, Sam Hubbard is going to tip a pass and Logan Wilson is going to pick it off and take it down to the 15 in the third quarter when the Chiefs are ready to go score and take a 2-possession lead, and instead the Bengals go and tie it up. You can't predict that, right? But those are things that happen in football games that are incredibly important. And I think these teams are very, very close.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the way they've both been playing over the last 5, 6, 7 weeks. I think that they're very close. I think that the secondary for Kansas City is better. And you're right. We don't know where Ja'Marr Chase is. Limited again on Thursday. Keep an eye on his practice status on Friday, even though that'll probably be an even less intense than the already no padded practice on Thursday this week. If he's limited, if he's not full go, he was such a key factor in those games against the Chiefs last year, especially the regular season game, obviously the 266-yard performance, but it's such a big factor that we just don't know about right now. And outside of that, you're looking for who's going to make the plays. Is it going to be more Chris Jones, or is it going to be more Trey Hendrickson? Is it going to be more Patrick Mahomes? Is it going to be more Joe Burrow? Can the Bengals run the ball against the Chiefs? Is that opportunity there to keep Chris Jones and that defense honest? How much of the running game is an impact either way
against the Bengals? Yeah,
right. Which I would be more surprised about. But the Bengals certainly are going to sell out in the opposite direction that they did.
And so if they do that, I could see the path where the Chiefs say, "Okay, we can run it this year." You know,
they ran it in the first game last year with Williams, I think. Which Williams?
Damian
doesn't. Yeah. Damian.
Daryl.
Daryl? They're both D names, and they both played for the Chiefs, I think.
Yeah, they both did. Yeah.
Yeah. But they were able to run it in that first game. And if, you know, yeah, that's certainly a factor. Underrated factor, probably. If they get the Bengals out of allocating extra resources and stopping the pass, that'd be tough for lose guys. Because to me, like, that's one of the big advantages they have, is they can just sit and nickel the entire game. Sometimes throw out an extra safety with Dax Hill, go to dime, or throw Trey Flowers out there, put an extra corner out there if they want to. Because you don't want, and I love Mike Hilton, you don't want Mike Hilton on Travis Kelce, just giving up too much size, right? And so there will be some interesting matchups there as to how they deal with Travis Kelce. But to me, one of the schematic X's and O's advantages for the Bengals in this game is it does seem like they can just stay in nickel the whole game. They don't have to go base against Kansas City's 12 personnel until they're forced to, unless they're forced to. And to me, that is something that could help them a little bit to deal with the passing game from the Chiefs.
Yeah, a sneaky good matchup here is Von Bell versus Juju, obviously.
Yeah.
And Mike Hilton versus Juju, former teammates.
Sure.
So, and they could be matched up with each other a lot, you know, with Juju playing the slot some. So we'll see.
It seems like in this particular matchup, it's tackling going to be big for the Bengals defense. As we've seen this year, they've been a really good tackling team, but the way Kansas City's evolved their offense to not be so downfield explosive, not going over the top to a Tyreek Hill, sometimes to a Valdez-Scantling, but without Hill, without Hardman, it's more intermediate. It's more catch and run. It's more Andy Reid creativity, Patrick Mahomes creativity. And so obviously a lot of challenges in this game for the defense, but it's going to be fun to watch, I think. I'm really excited for this game. This is the most exciting game for this team that they've had so far this year. And I think it's not even particularly close. Maybe the Ravens game before that game started, but I don't think it's even close.
No, it's not. It's not. Heck, there's a lot of excitement. It's a great measuring stick because if you can beat the Chiefs, you can beat any team. And the Chiefs should probably feel the same way, and they have a chip on their shoulder. And honestly, I like that they admit that. I like that they've had some trash talk this week, even though I think the Jordan Reed, I'm just kidding, I know it's Justin. Look at me getting names wrong. Those comments were silly. It gives a heat to it, but it wasn't the Titans all buttoned up. Oh yeah, no revenge factor. Damn that. You don't want to know what I would want to do if I lost a playoff game the year prior to the Locked On insert whatever podcast. All right. It would be war. Okay. And there would be a lot of trash talk and I would want revenge. And it doesn't matter if it's regular season or playoffs or both. So I like that the Chiefs have embraced it a little this week. And that's a fun storyline, certainly going into this game.
And if you're the Bengals and you want to embrace they've got to play us too, again, finding that chip on their own shoulder, right? Finding that why not us? It is us that they found last year, that chip on their own shoulder. This is the first step towards you getting yourself in a position for that first round bye. If you think that's your destiny this year, which is what we were talking about before the season, James, this is the first of 6 very difficult games. And if they win all of them, that means they've beaten the Bills and the Chiefs and the Ravens. That puts the AFC North squarely back in the Bengals' hands or likely in the Bengals' hands anyway. I guess there's still a chance the Ravens can win that tiebreaker. Maybe? No, they can't.
No.
Because they're even right now.
If the Bengals win out,
they win the division. They have really good chances at the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
And then
look at you. This is the most optimistic. Go ahead.
I'm not saying this is happening, but I'm saying if this is who they are, right? If this is who they want to be, and this is what we were talking about before the season, this is where it starts, right? And so that is a challenge ahead of them if they want to meet those goals that, were more our goals for the team before the season started.
If they do that, should new slogan be "This is us"?
That's a TV show, I think.
It is.
Cool.
Shout out to all the families out there listening right now that got that reference.
I wasn't one of the families, James.
Me neither. Don't worry. I haven't watched it. I'm just trying to appeal to everybody. See?
Yeah,
look at me. Look at me.
We got to embrace all the folks in our audience. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We will be back after the game to get you the post-game thoughts, reactions, and more here on the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until then, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the game, Hoo Day, and have a good one.